Hi, my name's Vince and welcome to the Vinceunlimited YouTube channel and to the story of my time with a Yamaha trial motorbike which I owned in the late 1970s. So settle in, grab a drink and a biscuit to hear how I started my journey on becoming a biker. We all remember our first girlfriend, first kiss, first single and first time stealing from the dairy. Or was that just me? Anyway, our vehicles are no exception, and my little Yamaha DT175 trail bike was the first vehicle that I owned. Mind you, at the time it didn't seem so little, and in many ways it wasn't actually the first. My parents had purchased a new Gilera moped from my older brother when he turned 16. They also gave me the option of a new ped when I reached the same age, or alternatively I could wait for a second-hand motorbike when I was 17. As I was able to borrow my brother's wheels at 16, as told in the story I recorded in my earlier video entitled Gilera 50 Touring Moped, already published on YouTube, click the link below, subscribe, etc. I chose the motorbike option at 17, and given some stringent restrictions on size, not a 250 son, that'll be too big, and considering my budget, I chose the Yamaha. The year was around 1978, or to be more precise, 1978, and the bike had a P registration plate, which meant it was only a few years old. That's a P at the end, by the way. Trail bikes back then were very much different from today's trial and motocross style bikes. The styling on my bike still had suggestions of a 50s off-road mount, with its front mudguard set close to the wheel. Shortly afterwards, off-road capable bikes were designed with higher clearance mudguards to better aid one's muddy plugging. Oh, hang on, this is a visual format, so right now I ought to include a photo for you. However, for reasons of me being a late teenager at a time when producing photos had a real cost and time consideration, plus the fact I had other priorities, such as getting on with riding my bike and other, life stuff, I never actually took any pictures of my bike. Nor did any of my family. So let me show you roughly what it would look like by sharing a photo originally published in an old bike magazine. Always liked this image because it best represented the look of my own DT175 with its same upswept exhaust, low set front mudguard, drum brakes and compact black engine. Just how I recalled mine. In other words, used and generally remembered in black and white. Starting with the bad stuff. The worst aspect was the bike's top speed. It was hardly a racer with its disappointing, quite miserable 65 mile an hour or so maximum velocity. Maybe I should have thought in terms of kilometres per hour, then it would have been over 100, because somehow that doesn't sound quite so bad. This limitation meant that it never kept up with my mate Jeff's smart little brand new Honda CB125 twin, which I pictured here. Then again, nothing else about this engine size could keep up either. The picture was borrowed from Jeff himself, although patently not taken by him, as he is the one that stood beside it. Being more positive, the best bit of my new toy was the colour. The bike was in a sound mechanical condition, if ever a 70s mass-produced Japanese two-stroke powered rattling lightweight bike could be. Plus it had no obvious physical damage to the bodywork. However, the bike's bodywork, what there was of it, had been repainted. I can't recall the probably implausible excuse the seller gave for the amateur respray, but I didn't care. It was a base cream colour with brown stripes, and I've tried to recreate the look here by borrowing another image. This one from a contemporary UK Yamaha DT175 sales brochure. This 1977 Yamaha image has been digitally enhanced by me using the Sketchbook App on my Apple iPad Air 4 by adjusting the colour scheme to how I recalled it, and then made more realistic by adding some age patination. For some peculiar reason, known only to myself, as a teenager my favourite colour was brown. Plus, at the time, Kenny Roberts was putting Yamaha on the racing map, and the distinctive blocky stripes he showcased were aped in a distinct fecal brown on my fuel tank. It was a unique colour scheme at the time, so if you recognise this pattern and now know the bike, please get in touch. I'd love to see it again. Mind you, it'd be well past its sell-by date by now, and I gets pretty ropey, so I'll only give you a few quid for it, alright? A useful, if not essential, feature of trail bikes is their off-roading ability, which is handy because that's where trails are usually located. With its bouncy suspension and the bike's tyres being knobblies, this gave me a chance to use it both on and off the blacktop. Not so much serious mud plugging, but at least the ability to climb easily up the pavement curb at the local disco. Of the few times I ventured off the actual tarmac, my inexperience kept me from performing fantastic tricks, and my leg length prevented me from stopping close to something steep. In fact, I can't ever recall pulling a proper front wheel in the air for more than half a second type wheelie. I call myself a biker. Plus, in those days, stoppies were only carried out by riders with no coordination and grabby brakes. The weedy little drums on the Yamaha certainly never grabbed anything to my knowledge. However, I did find the thing ace at driving around town, with its lightweight, flickability and highly responsive, almost manic, willing two-stroke motor. The wide bars, although sometimes a pain when riding through dense traffic, enabled sure-footed slow riding skills and great manoeuvrability. This was coupled to a high vantage point from that seat that didn't suit my legs, although it was certainly comfortable enough for one bum. Add a second bum, whose owner had to do with swing arm mounted rear foot pegs, and it didn't do so well. But for one up hooligan riding around town, it was perfect. I even considered fitting road tyres rather than the standard fitment off-road rubber, due to their tendency to flex quite a bit when cornering. I recall that despite my efforts, I couldn't match a front and rear, as they were completely differing diameters and profile, so I didn't get far with this theory. If I had succeeded, I would have beaten the modern super motards to the idea by several years. Despite not heralding this modern change, I travelled many a happy mile. Nevertheless, it was the unhappy mile that it will be best remembered for. I recall a frustrating crawl up the outside lane of a dual carriageway at its 65 mile an hour maximum. Jeff on his CB had easily accelerated past a car on the ascent and unexpectedly decided on a different route into the New Forest. Ahead he swung into a left-hand turn and disappeared. I was still in hot, or rather warm pursuit, and trying to pass the same car myself. Why people insist on travelling exactly 1 mile an hour less than my top speed, I'll never know. Anyway, I just about made it past and shot round the bend. It was set at a right angle, despite being on my left. And Kenny himself would have been pleased with taking it at this speed, on his race bike. Mind you, the Yamaha did have one race bike advantage. The foot pegs on a narrow trail bike are small and high set, so don't dig in easily when cornering. It was a common problem on most 70s machinery. Provided their tyres held out, the thing could corner like a demon, and the road that day was perfectly dry and distinctly devoid of devious undulations. I daringly leaned over to the point the sides of my boots were even scraping the deck, but it wasn't enough. The corner was too sharp. So I leaned a bit more and something eventually had to ground out. My handlebar ends. I slid across the road. Thankfully, it being the 70s meant that no traffic was on the other side. Unfortunately, being summer and me being a carefree teenager meant that I wasn't fully dressed properly. As I slid, the lightweight jacket I had on quickly rode up my torso, followed by my t-shirt, then in turn by each layer of my skin. Gravel rash par excellence. Jeff did eventually come back to find me, sad and sore on the corner, so went off to seek assistance. Unbelievably, this took him over an hour just to get to the next little conurbation a mile or so down the road. He eventually returned armed with water to cleanse my wounds and offering some excuse about having to stop to have a chat with a girl who was apparently quite mesmerised about the story of his friend who was probably bleeding to death just up the road. Despite this mishap, I enjoyed my year with the Yamaha. I commuted to work, explored multiple lanes at the weekends, and generally messed about with my mates. Even now I wish it was sat in my garage so I could play on it again. The engine may have been noisy and underpowered, but the styling was just right. The black and rusting high side-mounted exhaust which scorched my leg when riding, and the low front mud guard which clogged with mud on a simple grassy field may date the thing to a certain period, but that's when I was learning the meaning of freedom, and this bike helped me achieve that important feeling. I'll always remember it fondly, like all my other firsts, I guess. This true story is written by me, filmed on my iPhone 14 Pro, edited on my iPad Air 4 in Apple iMovie using Keynote for the main titles. The photos used here are copyrighted Bike Magazine, my mate Jeff, Yamaha UK and myself. The story was first published on my website between March 2004 and August 2022. But as this doesn't exist anymore except deep within Internet History record sites, this video is probably the only place you'll find it, if you ignore my WordPress site, as most people do. So now's really your only chance for you to press like before you proceed to fill up my comment section with stories of your own early trail bike experiences. I declare this a film by Vince, copyright 2022. See you all again soon with more biking stories.